sensitive. It was a media, like, shitstorm. I mean, it was everywhere. They would jump out of bushes to get an interview with you. I mean, it was, like, ridiculous.
Wow.
They were not sensitive to what we had gone through. I mean, they were in your face.
Yeah, that seems to be a collective sentiment I'm hearing. And you were, what, 17, 18 years old?
I was 18.
18.
Yep.
So I want to kind of talk about your experiences over 3 distinct time periods. And the first one I want to kind of ask about is the immediate. I know it's probably going to be a little bit blurry, but I'm conceptualizing the immediate in sort of this first 30-day period.
Okay.
What was the first month or so like for you?
The first month, I wanted everything to kind of go back to normal. And I felt I was already going through it's almost like you feel lost when you're about to graduate high school, and you're kind of, it's a confusing time in your life. So I was already going through some of that, but then when Columbine hit, I felt vulnerable and sad and angry. I was so angry. I wanted things to go, I tried so hard for things to go back to normal. So, but I had a new normal at that time, so, it was almost a surreal time. Like, it was, all a daze and a blur.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Just go to funerals, it was just like I wouldn't play basketball anymore. I just kind of, I don't know, I just kind of went into my own, I did my own thing,
Right.
I lost friends. I had a hard time hanging out with Columbine people. That was hard for me to, like, if I saw or talked about Columbine, I'd break out in hives.
Interesting.
Like, I'd have, like, a physical, symptoms from it.
That's really interesting, because what I've heard from some other survivors is that they actually gravitated towards each other, kind of feeling like they were the only ones that understood, and you seem to have the almost adverse reaction to that.
Yeah, I would force myself to go to these things, but I struggled. Actually, I'm from Seattle, so after I graduated, I actually went, it was a summer later, like, I could not be around Littleton or Colorado. I actually left for a month and went back to my old hometown in Tacoma because I couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
I just didn't, it's like I wanted a new life, and I didn't want this to define who I was.
Right.
At all, because I felt like every time, it absorbed every thought in my mind. It absorbed my whole being, every thought, every time I talked with someone, they were like, "Are you okay?" Or I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want, it was such a weird time. Plus, I was so young.
Yeah.
I was young. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So.
Well, and that brings up an interesting kind of segue. Were you, or I guess did you is probably a better way to say it, in that first 30 days seek out any resources, any counseling, anything like that?
I did. My mom took me to, I have quite the counseling journey, and it's made me who I am today. But my first, and I laugh about it now, but the first counselor my mom took me to, it didn't go well because I was so angry. Yeah. I threw a vase in the room. Like, I was just not, I was mad. I was just mad. And this counselor, she must have said something that pissed me off or did something because I just snapped. Yeah. I was very just touchy, I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I was a mess. I was a total mess, and people were trying to act like they know what I had gone through, and they didn't. And so I was just like, I felt like an outsider. I felt crazy. People were telling me I was going to be crazy because of this. So that was hard. It was a really hard time, but yes, I did try to go to counseling. I didn't seek counseling again for a couple years after that, and then I started really doing my work with my trauma. So,
is there any? Well, actually, let me back up for a second. I know it was sort of right around the end of that month, possibly into the beginning of next month, that you had started having contact with law enforcement. Were you assigned a victim's advocate to sort of work with you through that process?
Nope. Not at all. Not at all. Nor were any services provided for me. My parents out of their own pocket, and my dad had good health insurance, they paid for my counseling. Okay. And then when I found the right counselor, they paid for that.
Sounds like you got some good parents.
I do. I mean, they weren't the most supportive. Like, they didn't understand. It's hard to explain. My dad's a Vietnam vet, so I think from that standpoint, he kind of understood the war aspect of it. But they definitely knew I needed help, and no expense paid. They made sure that I got the counseling that I needed. And, between them and my husband, who I've been with since I was 19, so my he's pretty much met me a year out of my shooting. So, I mean, he's a huge reason, too, for my just overall mental health.
Do you know why you weren't given any services?
I didn't really, so I didn't know they were available, at all. I didn't know at all. I know that they provided at the school on-site counselors after the shooting, because I remember sitting in circles with kids after the funerals, and we went to Chatfield High School. I remember we went there for like a week or two. I remember doing small, focus group kind of counseling together. But no, I was never offered a victim's advocate.
Looking back on that first 30 days, I know that it's a little fuzzy. What do you think might have helped you kind of start that recovery process that you didn't get but might have needed?
I think more services. Meeting with other victims, even from other shootings, I think would have helped. A victim's advocate would have been great, just to know what resources you have out there, because I didn't know of really any. I mean, they kind of told us, counseling's provided here at the school, but if you want, here's a list of counselors, blah, blah, blah. But that was pretty much the extent of it that I remember.
Yeah, and it sounds like, at least, I mean, obviously I never saw the list of counselors, but talking to some of the other survivors, it doesn't necessarily seem like any of these individuals were trauma trained or they were vetted or anything like that. I've heard some pretty odd questions being asked of survivors.
Yeah. I remember that first counselor my parents took me to. She would ask really weird questions. That's weird that you brought that up, because that just struck a chord with me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, not in a bad way, but it was almost inappropriate. You know what I'm saying? Like she wasn't being professional about it, or she wasn't trained properly.
Yeah.
But Columbine set the precedent for, we were one of the first mass shootings, so they didn't know how to deal with this.
Right.
At all. So we were kind of guinea pigs, if you think about it. I mean,
yeah,
we really were. I mean, now they're I guess each mass shooting they learn more. Sadly enough.
Yeah, I was about to say, unfortunately, we get more information and it seems to be coming quicker.
And what victims and survivors need, and that this is something that is going it's going to impact this individual the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. So the next time period I kind of want to talk about is what I'm calling the intermediate